The re-elected Gauteng Premier finally announced his cabinet last night. The new executive consists of the ANC, the IFP, Rise Mzansi, as well as the Patriotic Alliance. The Democratic Alliance decided not to take part in the Provincial Government of Unity following the failure to reach an agreement with the ANC. Let's now bring in the Gauteng DA leader, Solly Msimanga, to weigh in on the new provincial government. Solly, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Sure, even before the announcement was made by the Premier, the DA had issued a statement that they won't be forming part of the government of provincial unity. So does this mean it is the end of the road? The Premier had said during his press briefing that the door still remains open.
Well, thank you very much, Eldrin. Good morning to you and good morning to the newsroom viewers this morning. We remain, available to engage and to make sure that, the voters' wishes in Gauteng is actually then respected. And that is of a government that shares power, or political parties that share power in government, and not just, other political parties coming in and becoming vote voters, for the governing party. And I think yesterday was actually a testament of exactly what we were scared would happen. That, the ANC would want to then continue as they have been controlling, in this instance, 98% of the budgets, 98% of the service delivery departments, and actually then meaning that all that they've given to other political parties is just going to be scraps of things that are not going to even have any kind of, impact in terms of changing the lives of the people of Gauteng. And this is why the DA said that we're not prepared to be part of.
Yeah. During the presser yesterday as well, the ANC chairperson, Panyaza Lesufi, now speaking specifically about their press briefing that they had alongside the negotiating members of the ANC, including the Secretary General of the party. He read a letter that he said came from the Democratic Alliance on the 14th of June, or the letter that led to the decision that was taken on the 14th of June that the DA would be supporting the ANC in electing the Speaker, as well as the Deputy Speaker, who's Refilwe Ntseke, your member, as well as the Premier. And in that letter, it was agreed, and this was your proposal even, that the ANC takes 7 MEC seats, and the ANC takes 7 MEC seats, including, I think, 1 political party, and then the 3 other seats will go to the Democratic Alliance. Do you know about that letter?
Well, I can tell you what that letter said. That letter, because I'm the one who wrote that letter. That letter says, and it was after a conversation that had taken place, we were saying that we were willing to sacrifice on the proportionality of, or the proportional representation. And our letter is very specific, Aldrin. Our letter says that the DA will go to a minimum of 3 if there's going to be a power sharing, or there's going to be other political parties, not political party, other political parties that will be introduced into this thing. So the ANC in that particular meeting has said that they had intentions of bringing 2 other political parties minimum into that. So that would have meant that they would have then ended up themselves with between 4 or 5, depending on whether it's 3 or 2 parties that would have been introduced in addition to the DA. This is why the DA was more than happy to then, give up 1 more seat. If you were to then look at the proportional, representation that we were seeking for. So I don't think that they are reading that particular letter in good faith now, and because they're just trying to justify what they wanted to do. We've said to them from the get-go, there's no way that you can get 100% more in terms of cabinet representation, 100% more to the DA, while our difference in terms of the numbers there don't actually then justify you getting more. This is what we have said to them, and this is where the conversation started souring.
Yeah. So why did you walk away if you had asked for 3 seats and there was an agreement that from the 7 seats, as your interpretation of it is, that of those 7 executive council seats, that some will go to other political parties and the others to the ANC?
Because ultimately after that, they say that they were only going to, and this was the conversation that was had the day before yesterday, that they are not going to give any other party any more seats if the DA takes their full 3 seats. that they actually wanted to revise even the offer to then say the DA must take 2 seats and then they will introduce another party to then take a third seat. So a minimum for them was them getting 7 plus 7 seats in the cabinet plus 1 of the premier. So they wanted to have 8 seats in the cabinet and then make sure that they only give 3 to the DA and other parties. That is something that we were not prepared to do. And also we were not prepared to just give names and then hope and pray that, the departments that will be given will be meaningful. I mean, and you would have seen what is now being given to other political parties now as MECs. Those departments, and they've been diluted down to mean absolutely nothing. The powers of those departments, Eldrin, is actually then being taken away. I'll give you an example. Department of eGov has never been a standalone. It's always been either merged with with infrastructure, or in the last term, as it was, has always been merged with COGTA. At this point in time, it's just going to be in limbo. You're not going to be able to then do much. The Department of Agriculture in Gauteng has never been a standalone. It has always been with economic development, because Gauteng is not a big agricultural, province. It relies on other provinces. But if you are going to then talk about agriculture in Gauteng, you're talking about agro-processing. Therefore, you need economic development to be matched with that. That has also been stripped. And it is laughable to then say now you're having a Department of Environment that talks to helping municipalities to clean up. Really? That is a joke of no note. And this doesn't talk to really power sharing. The ANC has actually exposed themselves that they didn't want partners. They wanted voting afforders. They are now taking 98% of the budget and the power, and they are only giving 2% to those that they claim to now be coming in and as partners. And this is not going to have any kind of impact in the lives of the people of Gauteng in a positive way, at least. And this is what the DA said they were not going to be part of.
Yeah, so the DA has consistently relied on the principles of the Government of National Unity, specifically Clause 16 of the Government of National Unity Statement of Intent. Is the DA's understanding that the wording in that Statement of Intent, I'm just going to read it quickly, the Government of National Unity shall be constituted in a manner that reflects the genuine inclusiveness of political parties that are party to the Statement of Intent and are represented in the National Assembly, broadly taking into account the number of seats parties have in the National Assembly and the need to advance the national interest. The President shall, in constituting the executive, take into account the electoral outcomes. So that is, of course, speaking at a National Assembly, and if you think about it, as cascading down to the provincial legislature. Is your understanding that taking into account the electoral outcomes equates to proportional representation? Does it mean the same thing?
And that is exactly what we have been saying. And this is what we put, even if you look at the same letter that Panyaza was referring to, the first part of that letter talks to exactly that. It says, we need to then, ensure that there is a reflection of the voters' outcome in terms of how we engage and how we negotiate. Therefore, the proportional representation would have been the order of the day. And this is why we ended up at the second letter that we wrote to them to then say, if you want to then hang on to three political parties being in the executive and not other political parties. This is down that the breakdown that we are putting to you. So that letter all of a sudden is not now being proposed or is not now being published like the first letter is being published here. So we are saying to you that it looks and it sounds like the ANC has never really been engaging in good faith. They have just been wanting power. They just wanted other parties to be propping them up. And, we are now, being vindicated, as I said to you earlier on. And this is something that, we'll continue to then expose as we go forward. Okay. And we will then see how they're able to then hold this government together with being a minority government that is not really a representation of what the voters have said to us.
Yeah, will you please share that letter with us? If you don't mind, you can share it on social media or share it with us, and then we'll share it with our viewers as well.
We'll certainly do that.
Okay. Okay. But then also, I'm not too sure whether taking into account the electoral outcomes means it must reflect the number of seats. So it equates to proportional representation. But we can move on from that point. Refilwe Ntseke is the Deputy Speaker of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. She is a member of the Democratic Alliance. What does this mean? Because as far as Panyaza Lesufi is concerned, and what he spoke about yesterday, is that the DA is part of this government of provincial unity.
So, Adrian, I must make this point very, very clear. The DA is not going into this, was never going into this for the sake of just adding numbers or just wanting positions for the sake of having those positions. We wanted to go in there and strategically be able to then bring in the changes that we said we wanted to then bring in. And therefore, the positions that we were seeking to get into were supposed to be complementary to each other. Therefore, there's no way that we will then allow a situation where we continue to have a deputy speaker that is not, going to have meaningful contributions. We were pairing that with a chair of chairs that was coming in with the other portfolios that we were going to get in terms of the oversight committees that would have been there. Therefore, there's no need for us to then continue having the deputy speaker, if we're not going to then follow it up with all the other things that we said we wanted to then introduce in that particular space. So Refilwe is not going to continue to be the deputy speaker in Gauteng because this doesn't talk to what we were aiming to then achieve in this government.
When does she resign?
Well, this is something that we will have engagement on, and she will be making that announcement very, very soon.
Okay. And the possibility, once again, as the Premier had said, that the door still remains open. You guys are still willing to speak to the ANC, but are you willing to change your tune around your understanding of what representation means?
Adrian, if it means that we are going in there to be voting further and not be able to then bring anything significantly or significant change, we are not prepared to do it. The people of Gauteng and the people of South Africa will be looking at the performance of government and saying, but the DA, you are there, what are you doing? But if the portfolios that you have, if the power that you have is not able to then, produce any kind of change, then we will be lumped with the failures of government. And we don't want that. We want to go in and be able to meaningfully contribute, through portfolios that have, impact on service delivery. That's what we're prepared to do. And this is why we are saying we will engage if the ANC is truly, of the mind that, there should be power sharing. And that also reflect what the voters have said to us. And then we can then engage. But if it's just to give positions that are meaningless, like what we've seen yesterday, then we are not prepared to do that. We would rather go into opposition and serve the people of Gauteng from the opposition benches. We now have more numbers in the legislature. We now, have, the knowledge and are empowered with the fact that this government doesn't have a majority. Therefore, when there's budgets that needs to be passed, when there's reports that needs to be passed, they have to then talk to the aspirations and the dreams of the people of Gauteng. And if they don't, then they will not pass through us.
Thank you so much for your time. Solly Msimanga is the leader of the Democratic Alliance in Gauteng. And of course, the four political parties that make up the provincial executive in Gauteng, they account for around 32 seats of the 80 provincial legislature seat in Gauteng.